So what have I been reading this week? I have finished 2 books, I've been reading a few others, I've got a few more books planned to be read soon, and I have some new RPG books. So, finished books first. Silver on the Tree by Susan Cooper, the last in the Dark is Rising sequence, which I've really enjoyed reading that whole sequence over the last few weeks really. I finished the first 4 books in 6 days, and then this was delayed by other required reading. And it was good, I enjoyed it. It was probably for me the weakest of all 5. I'd still say it was pushing 4 stars, which for me is very high. I think there were some issues with pacing, character arcs, that meant, and maybe the very final epilogue that made it very slightly unsatisfying at points, but it's still a good conclusion. I think book 4, The Grey King, is the best of the series, and yeah, I'd highly recommend that. I'm going to do some videos on it soon. I think I'll do a why you should read the whole series, and then I'll do a single review for the first book. So I also finished, not this book, this is Hawkmoon by Michael Moorcock, The History of the Rune Staff. I don't know where my copy of Elric of Melniboné is. I think the kids have moved it. It's downstairs somewhere. But I finished Elric of Melniboné, which is the first book in the Elric cycle. And again, a lot like Silver on the Tree, I enjoyed it without thinking it was amazing or perfect. I probably thought Silver on the Tree was slightly stronger than Elric. I'm going to have a discussion with Hemvar, Liam's Lyceum, at some point soon about it, like a spoiler discussion. And eventually I'll do a review of some of the Elric books for Appendix N. But the summary would be, it's pacey, it's enjoyable, it's got good world building, the characters are very interesting, the style is very arch and pointed, and sometimes there's a kind of degree of, oh, okay, something's just happened. Oh, okay, we're meant to just move on to this. And I think maybe a bit too much of the author comes through as well, in terms of when the author is on the page a lot, whether explicitly speaking to the audience, breaking the fourth wall, or implicitly, you have to have an attractive author, and Moorcock's kind of high regard for himself comes across even here. However, I'd say it was good. So, and I'm looking forward to reading Hawkmoon, which is on my TBR for this year, or perhaps early next year, which is also an Appendix N book. Things I've been continuing to read, or that I've been dipping in and out of, depending on the type of book. Dune, the first book of the Dune trilogy, Dune. I've read only a chapter of it, and I need to speed up a little bit, because I was hoping to be a bit further along by now. But the buddy read I'm in on Megan's Reading Revelations Discord is through to the end of September, so I've got plenty of time there. That is an objective probably for the next couple of weeks, where I am away on holiday, mixture of work and holiday. I'll probably want to catch up a bit there. I've also been reading some short stories from Lee Brackett's Super Pack. My slightly shady, because I'm not sure what's copyrighted and what's not in here, but print-on-demand book of her short stories. Very good. I'll be putting up a review of some of those in the next couple of days, along with Sword of Rhiannon. And the other book I've been reading is Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett, which is the 3rd Discworld book. It was one of the first 2 that were bought for me once I got into the series. I was bought Hogfather, which is book 20. I then read Colour of Magic and Light Fantastic, borrowed from a family friend, and then I was bought Equal Rights and Mort. So this is a reread, 23 years on, 24 years on, 23 years I suspect. And I'm enjoying it so far. I am 50 pages or so into it out of under 300, so over a sixth of the way. And it's funny, it's engaging, it's clever, all the things you expect from Pratchett. It does show that he is already beginning to move away. It's very much a right turn from the high, heavy satire of Light Fantastic, Colour of Magic into a more character-based and realistic world, because it's important to say there is a lot of character realism in Discworld, which is very central to why the stories matter and why people love them rather than just enjoy them. It's not as polished as he would very quickly become compared to Guards, which I've reviewed on the channel. You can see that within a few books, within a couple of years of writing, he had hit his peak, essentially, pretty much. He had hit a very long peak of being an exceptionally good writer. Here, he's just a very good writer. So I'm in looking forward to finishing that. I will finish that probably in the next 4 or 5 days. TBR, well, Equal Rights and Dune, but also a couple of other books to switch to now. I've got space in the schedule. Complete Tales of H.P. Lovecraft. This is my rather nice edition which is the Rock Point Complete Tales with embossed cover and gilt and stuff. No, this is something I've enjoyed reading a bit of, in and out of, and I've probably read at different points 25%, 35% of his stories. But I want to push through, and most of the ones I haven't read are pretty minor ones, but there's still dozens of those, and so I want to read as many, or probably all of them, so I can do a review of this book and then do a Lovecraft Appendix N chat. The other book I'm going to start is, I feel like a booktube cliche at this point, but it was requested by Furroy, The Lies of Loch Lamora, which I haven't read. I've only got the first in the trilogy. It is, I think, it's the next one of the kind of books that weren't my TBR a few months ago I want to read. Sword of Rhiannon was one from my 100 subs request video. So I'm going to read that, and hopefully I don't hate it. I'm sure I'll enjoy it. It's something where I wonder sometimes about coming into modern fantasy, modern sci-fi, how much my fairly off-piste tastes will mean I end up... And it's okay if I don't enjoy what other people enjoy, it doesn't bother me, and I'm sure it doesn't bother you. But it's something where I wonder how much, if I just only read modern fantasy classics that people really love within the last 20 years, how much I'd just be like, oh, okay, that's okay, because of my own peculiar tastes. I don't know. But yeah, that is the TBR for the next, well, probably few weeks. I'm not sure if I'll start Lies this coming week or not. We'll see, I suppose. I don't have any fiction books to book haul. I've got a few I'm likely to get whilst I'm away, some classic paperbacks, Philip Jose Farmer, Jack Vance particularly, and I'm expecting at some point a copy of Lord of the Hollow Dark from America, so it's taking a longer time, but that's by Russell Kirk, who's a very, very interesting, good ghost story writer, amongst many other things he did. And there's the half background to that, by the way, is I did order a copy. At last I found a copy that was an acceptable price, that wasn't in British terms £50 or more, crazily overpriced at points, and I received it and I was like, wow, this is great. And then I thought, wow, that's funny, there's a kind of issue with a dust cover, and there are two dust covers because it was in fact a different book, a book about Amelia Earhart, and it just had, presumably pretty innocently, got Lord of the Hollow Dark dust cover on it from, because it's a thrift book, and I think what's happened is someone's estate has liquidated the books. It's gone to Thrift Books, or whoever it was I ordered it from in America, and they have been like, Lord of the Hollow Dark, you know, that's just a mistake that was made at home whilst the dust cover was tidied up, and it's been replicated down to me. I got a refund, and with it I eventually bought the new one. But I do have an RPG haul which I received today, my Necrotic Gnome Advanced Fantasy Kickstarter bundle. I've had the PDFs for months at this point, but how to go through this. First, there are these volumes of rules, so more monsters, more treasures, drawing, so Old School Essentials, which is what this game is a retro clone, a kind of rewrite, a legal rewrite of Basic Expert by Tom Moldvay and David Cook. These two are for that system, but they draw, rather than being a rewrite of that material, they are drawing on the first edition Dungeons and Dragons material, monster manuals and treasure books, Unearthed Arcana and the DMG. So they're a sort of supplement to introduce a slightly higher mode into the game, of different types of treasures, more complicated things. There's also advanced fantasy classes and spells, which were, again, not from Basic, but drawing on first edition. There is a Kickstarter exclusive zine, Carcass Crawler issue 0, sorry, which has some classes and more equipment, and if you're using advanced fantasy rules for Old School Essentials, it has races as well, ancestries. And again, I've read that. I like more classes, a little mutant class there, and so kind of alternative wizard and a beastmaster and a spellcasting bard, whereas the advanced fantasy bard is more inspired by, he has a couple of musical effects, kind of, he's more a thief with some weird magical effects than he is a mage, and this is more of a mage bard, so a bit more familiar to 5th edition players. Reference booklet with a really lovely cover, which is that by Stephen Mullen or something? Cover up Rachel Quinlan, really lovely, and that's just tables, and that's good to have a single reference point, because I find this actually when playing 1st edition, even when I've got my DM screen up with inserts, when you've got lots of charts that are relevant for a game, and that's less true in 5th edition, I basically never refer to charts mid-game in 5th edition for all its flaws. That is an upside, a small upside, because I like the feel of the older games. But so reference booklets, and then 3 adventures, lovely hardbacks with lovely design, lovely covers. Big thing about Old School Essentials is how good the layout is, heavily praised. The fact that is a room, there's 3 rooms on that side, there are a couple of rooms on the other side, well, 1 room plus the area map. So good layout, really beautiful art. The first couple of adventures Necrotic Gnome did, or a couple of them, I think, Hole in the Oak and I think Winter's Daughter were both not Drug Bolton, but the other 2 were reprinted like this. And I was really tempted to get them, and maybe one day I will. And you can see why you would want the reprints, because they're such nice reprints, such nice kind of redesigns. But it's money, isn't it? You're paying whatever it is, £10 or more for something you've already got in hard copy. So that's what I got in terms of that. And I may or may not run some of these soon. I may even find groups to run some of them with, just because it's nice to have opportunities to run different material you have. So what have you been reading? What books have you received? And if you are an RPG player or dungeon master or game master, what have you been playing lately? Tell me in the comments. Till next time.